It began with a single sentence that cut through the chamber like a blade. On live television during what was supposed to be a routine Senate debate, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett leaned forward, her voice steady but laced with fire. Senator Vance, would you care to explain why your private communications with Ukrainian business groups say the exact opposite of what you've been telling the American people? The room froze. Reporters stopped typing. Cameras zoomed in, and the audience watching at home leaned closer to their screens. For a split second, J.D. Vance's confident expression faltered. His lips tightened, his eyes flickered with unease, and the silence became unbearable. Crockett didn't hesitate. She pulled out a folder, held it high enough for everyone to see, and continued. These are verified documents, Senator. They prove that while you were standing here claiming to defend American interests, you were quietly negotiating terms that betray everything you've told your voters. Gasps echoed across the Senate floor. The bombshell had been dropped, and the shock was immediate. Social media lit up within seconds, hashtags exploding across every platform. Clips of Crockett's words began spreading like wildfire, and commentators scrambled to grasp the gravity of what had just unfolded. For J.D. Vance, the nightmare had only just begun. The cameras widened to capture the chamber. This was not a small hearing, not a closed-door briefing. It was prime time, broadcast across every major network. Senators sat in stunned silence, some leaning forward as if they couldn't believe what they had just heard. Others whispered frantically to aides, passing notes that only deepened the tension. J.D. Vance tried to regain his composure, forcing a smile that looked more strained than confident. But the damage was already spreading. His colleagues, once quick to nod along with his fiery speeches, suddenly avoided his gaze. The Senate, normally a stage of rehearsed decorum, now felt like a pressure cooker seconds from exploding. Reporters packed in the press gallery scribbled every word, their phones buzzing with alerts from editors demanding instant updates. Producers shouted in headsets as breaking news banners flashed across the nation. "Crockett drops Ukraine bombshell," the headline screamed, and the story was already racing faster than Vance could respond. For months, Vance had styled himself as the unshakable defender of conservative values, the voice unafraid to stand against what he called the Washington elite. He railed against foreign entanglements, promising that America would never bow to outside influence under his watch. His speeches were fiery, his soundbites sharp, and his image carefully crafted, but now, in one moment, Crockett had yanked the curtain back. Her words suggested that behind the speeches lay something very different, private dealings that contradicted every stance he had made public. The audience at home didn't just see another political spat, they saw a battle of credibility. On one side, a senator whose career was built on fiery rhetoric. On the other, a congresswoman unafraid to put him on trial in front of the entire nation. The clash was raw, unfiltered, and impossible to ignore. And as the chamber simmered with disbelief, the question began to spread. If Jasmine Crockett was right, what else had J.D. Vance been hiding? J.D. Vance finally pushed back from his desk, his voice rising in protest. "This is outrageous," he snapped, waving a dismissive hand. "These so-called documents are nothing more than partisan garbage, twisted and weaponized to smear my reputation." But Jasmine Crockett didn't flinch. She leaned into the microphone, her words crisp and cutting. "Partisan garbage? Senator, these are your own emails. Your signature is on them. You assured voters you had no ties, no conversations, no back-channel deals. Yet here you are, caught in your own handwriting. Tell the American people, was that a lie then? Or is it a lie now?" The chamber erupted in murmurs. Senators shifted uncomfortably as the exchange intensified. Vance slammed his fist against the desk. "I will not be lectured by someone exploiting confidential matters for cheap political points. This is a witch hunt, plain and simple." Crockett shot back instantly, her voice slicing through his defense. "No, Senator. A witch hunt is when there are no witches. But this is proof. You talk tough on foreign influence while quietly drafting terms with Ukrainian business groups. That isn't patriotism. That's hypocrisy." Gasps echoed again, louder this time. The microphones picked up every word, broadcasting the clash into millions of living rooms across America. News anchors interrupted programming to air the confrontation live. Social media caught fire. clips of Vance's red-faced denial clashed with Crockett's pointed retorts, fueling hashtags like #VanceExposed and #Crockett Strikes. Commentators rushed onto live streams, dissecting every phrase, every stumble, every glare. Meanwhile, in the Senate chamber, the tension grew unbearable. Vance tried to cut her off, raising his voice in anger. But Crockett pressed harder. "You built your brand on fighting corruption, Senator, so explain to the American people why your own words read like instructions for selling influence abroad. Were you protecting America, or just protecting yourself?" The silence that followed was suffocating. Vance opened his mouth but found nothing to say. For the first time in months, the man who always had a line, always had a soundbite, stood speechless. The silence shattered when Jasmine Crockett dropped her final card. She raised a single page from the folder, her voice deliberate and unshakable. "This is not speculation. This is a direct record of your communication with Ukrainian business groups dated just 3 months ago. It clearly outlines your willingness to explore financial arrangements in exchange for political leverage. Do you deny this page, Senator?" The chamber erupted into chaos. Senators shouted over one another, aides scrambled, and the presiding officer slammed the gavel, begging for order. Cameras zoomed in on Vance, whose face drained of color as he stared at the document in Crockett's hand. Crockett pressed on, her tone sharpened to a razor's edge. "You claimed loyalty to American workers, yet here we see your private promises to foreign interests. This isn't just a contradiction, this is betrayal." The word hung in the air like a thunderclap. Reporters gasped audibly. On social media, the word betrayal trended instantly, amplified across timelines and headlines alike. Vance's attempt to respond was drowned out by the uproar. He rose to his feet, gesturing wildly. "This is a smear job, a fabrication!" But the crowd wasn't buying it. His own colleagues looked away, unwilling to defend him. The Senate floor felt less like a chamber of governance and more like a courtroom, where Vance stood as the accused. Crockett delivered the decisive blow. "You want to talk about patriotism? Patriotism is telling the truth. Patriotism is standing here in front of the American people and exposing the lies you thought would never see the light of day. You can shout all you want, Senator, but the truth is louder than your excuses." The eruption was instant. Some senators clapped, others shouted for order, but the message was clear. The bombshell had landed, and J.D. Vance was engulfed in the storm. The uproar refused to settle, but Jasmine Crockett's voice cut through once more, steady and final. "Let this moment stand as proof. No matter how loud the lies, no matter how carefully the facade, the truth always breaks through. The American people deserve honesty, and tonight they've seen it for themselves." Her words echoed across the chamber, amplified by the silence that followed. J.D. Vance stood frozen, his papers scattered, his allies refusing to meet his eyes. The image was devastating. A senator once praised for his defiance now reduced to stammering denial, cornered under the weight of his own contradictions. News anchors filled screens across the nation. "Crockett destroys Vance live," the headlines blared. Talk shows canceled their regular segments to broadcast the footage on repeat. Within minutes, social media platforms were overwhelmed with clips, memes, and debates, each one piling pressure onto Vance's crumbling credibility. Supporters of Crockett hailed her as fearless, the one voice willing to challenge hypocrisy in the Senate. Her allies framed the moment as a turning point, proof that even the most powerful figures could not escape accountability. For Vance, the fallout was immediate. Commentators labeled his career mortally wounded. Rivals circled like sharks, already preparing statements condemning his hidden ties. The Senate chamber itself seemed to hum with the weight of history, the sense that a line had been crossed, a reputation shattered in real time. And as Crockett gathered her papers and left the microphone behind, she didn't need to say another word. The point had been made. The wound inflicted, the truth unleashed. In living rooms, offices, and cafes across America, the question lingered. If this was what one night of truth could reveal, what else might still be hidden? The answer didn't come that evening. But one thing was undeniable. The Senate, the nation, and J.D. Vance himself would never be the same again.